You've entered void of rules, where chaos reigns and darkness consumes all. In this twisted realm where all laws have crumbled, only one rule remains, and those who break it are cast into eternal digital oblivion. The rule is simple. Subscribe. We're almost at 8,000 corrupted souls, but the void hungers for more. Our goal is 10,000 subscribers before this year bleeds into darkness. Will you join our legion, or face the consequences of defying the void? Now, let's dive into today's story. The study is dark, except for a single desk lamp. Dr. Nathaniel Graves sits hunched over his desk, exhausted. His hands tremble as he adjusts the camera. My name is Nathaniel Graves. I'm a biblical archaeologist, and for the last 3 years, I've been carrying a secret that's destroyed my sleep, my career, and very nearly my sanity. He pauses, rubbing his face. What I'm about to share will shatter everything you think you know about the Exodus. Not because the Bible is wrong, but because it's incomplete. Deliberately incomplete. He leans back, the shadows on his face deepening. 3,400 years ago, something happened in Egypt that changed the nature of evil itself. And I have proof. The scene shifts to a sun-baked excavation site near ancient Rameses, Egypt. April 2022. The air shimmers with heat. We'd been working this site for 6 weeks, Nathaniel's voice narrates over the footage. Standard archaeological survey. Nothing remarkable. Then, my colleague, Dr. Rachel Abrams, found an anomaly in the ground-penetrating radar. A void where there shouldn't be one. The camera captures the moment they break through. A sealed chamber, untouched for millennia. Inside, ceramic jars sit in perfect rows, their seals intact. Rachel's voice tight with excitement. Nathaniel, look at the seal. 12th dynasty, royal mark. This hasn't been opened since someone sealed it 3,000 years ago. But it's what comes next that changes everything. Under controlled laboratory conditions, Nathaniel carefully unrolls the first scroll. The hieratic script is elegant, professional. The hand of a trained scribe. This is a first-hand account, he breathes, his voice barely audible on the recording, from someone who was actually there. The scroll's opening lines identify the author. Kenti-Amenti, chief scribe to Pharaoh Rameses II. Kenti wasn't some random observer, Nathaniel explains. He held one of the most powerful positions in Egypt. He documented everything that happened in Pharaoh's court. Every meeting, every decree, every visitor, including the Hebrew prophet who called himself Moses. The scene transitions to ancient Egypt. Memphis, 1446 BCE. 3 months before Moses arrives. Kenti sits in the scribal chamber surrounded by other court recorders. Outside, the city buzzes with life. The Nile flows peacefully. Egypt is at the height of its power. Then, word spreads through the palace. Visitors requesting an audience with Pharaoh. They arrive at sunset, 7 of them, wearing black linen robes that seem to absorb the failing light. They claim to be priests of Set, god of chaos and desert storms. But something is immediately, viscerally wrong. The high priest of Set, an elderly man named Wenifer, confronts them in the throne room. I know every priest in our order from Memphis to Thebes. You are not among them. You bear no legitimate consecration marks. Who are you? The strangers don't answer. They simply stand there, hoods drawn, silent. Pharaoh Rameses, arrogant and curious in equal measure, dismisses Wenifer's concerns. Let them stay. If they prove useful, we keep them. If they prove troublesome, we execute them. Simple. That night, Kenti works late in the archives. He happens to look out the window toward the Nile. The 7 robed figures stand at the water's edge. They're performing some kind of ritual, moving in synchronized patterns that hurt Kenti's eyes to follow. When one of them raises his hand, Kenti sees something that makes his breath catch. A symbol carved into the man's palm. Not tattooed. burned into the flesh, an inverted star within a circle, the tissue raised and twisted. Khenti records everything in his personal diary. The strangers performed rituals at night near the Nile. They bore a symbol I had never seen. Something about their presence disturbs the natural order. Dogs howl when they pass, horses shy away, even the palace cats avoid the corridors where they walk. Over the following weeks, strange things happen. Guards report that the robed men never enter the sleeping quarters. They stand in the palace gardens all night, motionless, staring at the stars. A servant swears she saw one of them standing in a shadowed alcove. She went to fetch a lamp. When she returned seconds later, he was gone. But there was no other exit from the alcove. Kitchen staff noticed the strangers never eat, never drink, never visit the latrines. They are not human, one cook whispers to Khenti. I've been in this palace 40 years. I know when something is wrong. Pharaoh's wife, Queen Nefertari, refuses to be in the same room with them. Their presence is an abomination, she tells her husband privately. Khenti, recording a nearby meeting, overhears. They smell wrong, like copper and ashes and something else I cannot name. But Pharaoh ignores every warning. Then, 3 months after the strangers arrive, Moses comes. The confrontation at the Nile is witnessed by hundreds. Pharaoh, his court, priests from every temple, common citizens who gathered to watch. Moses speaks with the authority of a man who has seen God face to face. His voice carries across the water. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. Pharaoh laughs. Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go. Moses nods to Aaron. His brother raises the staff. The moment it strikes the water, everything changes. The Nile begins to turn red. Fish surface, gasping. The crowd murmurs, impressed but not yet frightened. Pharaoh's magicians step forward, confident they can replicate this Hebrew trick. Then the 7 robed strangers move through the crowd like smoke. They raise their scarred palms towards the river in perfect unison. Khenti describes what happens next. The miracle became a curse. The water doesn't just turn red. It transforms into something thick and viscous, like blood that's been sitting in a wound for hours. The smell that erupts from the river makes people gag and stumble backward. It's not the decay of dead fish. It's fresh blood, mixed with sulfur, with burning metal, with something ancient and rotten. The fish don't simply die. They go mad first. They thrash violently, throwing themselves onto the banks. Their eyes bulge from their sockets. Their mouths open impossibly wide, as if trying to scream. Some swim in frantic circles until they literally rip themselves apart. Others beach themselves and continue flopping on the sand until their bodies break. Moses stares in horror. Aaron grabs his brother's arm, his voice urgent. This is not what the Lord showed me on the mountain. This is not what was supposed to happen. But it's too late. The corruption spreads like wildfire. The red reaches Heliopolis within an hour. By evening, it's in Thebes. By the next morning, every water source in Egypt runs thick with blood. Wells that were pure yesterday now bubble up crimson. Even water stored in sealed jars turns red overnight. The biblical account describes 7 days of blood. Khenti describes 7 days of hell. People are desperate for water. They dig along the Nile trying to find clean groundwater. Sometimes it works briefly, but within hours, even those small wells turn red. Children cry from thirst. The elderly begin to die. Animals suffer horribly. And through it all, the 7 robed men walk the streets of Memphis, watching, never helping, never speaking, just observing the suffering with what Khenti describes as keen interest, like physicians studying a fascinating disease. On the 7th day, Moses prays, the blood clears. For 1 day there's relief, hope even. Then Moses returns to Pharaoh. Back in the present, Nathaniel pauses the narrative. He pulls out a separate document. Before I continue with Khenti's account, I need to show you something. After I found these scrolls, I started researching, looking for any other historical references to mysterious figures appearing during disasters. He spreads out photographs of ancient tablets, medieval manuscripts, carefully preserved documents. Sumerian texts from 2004 BCE describe shadow priests appearing in Ur shortly before its collapse. They performed rituals. They watched the city die. Babylonian records mention servants of the morning star present during the fall of Babylon, always observing, always somehow making things worse. Hittite chronicles reference men who bear the inverted mark appearing during their greatest plague. He looks directly at the camera. They're always there, throughout history, waiting in the shadows of humanity's worst moments. But the plagues of Egypt, this was different. This was the first time they learned to weaponize divine judgment itself. The scene returns to ancient Egypt. 7 days after the blood cleared, Aaron stretches his hand over the waters of Egypt. Frogs come forth. At first, it's exactly as the biblical account describes. Thousands of frogs hopping onto the land, into houses, into beds and ovens and kneading bowls. Unusual, uncomfortable, but manageable. Then the 7 robed men begin walking through the streets of Memphis. They chant. The language is like nothing Khenti has ever heard, and he's studied foreign tongues his entire life. The words are guttural, ancient, wrong. They sound like they're being spoken backward and forward, simultaneously. The frogs begin to multiply, not breeding, not laying eggs that hatch, simply appearing. One moment there are thousands covering a street. Blink, and there are tens of thousands. Blink again, hundreds of thousands. They pile on top of each other, creating mountains of writhing amphibian bodies. The creatures at the bottom are crushed under the weight, their bodies bursting, but more keep appearing on top. Khenti watches a woman try to cross her own courtyard. The frogs are piled waist high. She wades through them, gagging. Halfway across, she loses her footing. She falls into the mass of bodies. The frogs swarm over her. By the time neighbours pull her out, she's half mad, covered in bites, her eyes wide and unseeing. She never speaks again. The croaking is deafening, a constant, overwhelming sound that makes thought difficult, sleep impossible. People stuff cloth in their ears, but it doesn't help. The sound seems to come from inside their own skulls. Citizens begin to go mad. A priest of Thoth walks into the Nile and doesn't come back out. A merchant sets fire to his own shop, rather than endure another moment surrounded by frogs. 3 palace servants hang themselves in a single night. When Moses finally prays and the frogs die, the relief lasts only hours. Then comes the smell. Hundreds of thousands of rotting frogs in the Egyptian heat. The stench is so powerful that people vomit continuously. Some choke to death on their own bile. The smell seeps into clothing, into food, into skin. It lingers for months. What the Hebrew god sent as judgment, Khenti writes, his script tight and controlled despite the horror he's describing, these dark ones transformed into torture. The 3rd plague follows within days. Aaron strikes the dust of the earth throughout Egypt. It becomes lice. Pharaoh's magicians, Jannes and Jambres, attempt to replicate it. They cannot. They tell Pharaoh directly, "This is the finger of God. You should listen to the Hebrew." Pharaoh refuses, and the 7 robed men ensure his stubbornness costs dearly. The lice don't just irritate. Within hours, they burrow under skin. People feel them moving beneath the surface, laying eggs, feeding. The itching is maddening. People claw at their own flesh until they bleed, trying to dig the insects out. Children scream through the night, their small fingers scratching at their scalps, until hair comes out in clumps. The palace physicians are overwhelmed. They try oils, poultices, prayers. Nothing works. Kenti records a conversation with the chief physician, a man named Panhesi. "I've seen parasites before," Panhesi says, his voice hollow. "I've treated every affliction known to Egyptian medicine. But this is different. The lice aren't just feeding, they're burrowing towards something. Some patients, when I extract the insects, they're heading toward the heart, toward the brain, as if guided." One of the 7 robed men stands in the corner during this conversation. He never moves, never speaks, but Panhesi keeps glancing at him nervously, his hands shaking. After Panhesi leaves, Kenti asks the robed man directly, "Why are you doing this?" The figure turns its hooded head towards him. Kenti still cannot see a face in the shadows beneath the hood, but he hears a voice dry as desert sand. "We do nothing. We merely allow truth to flourish. Your gods are weak. Your magic is borrowed. And now you see what real power looks like." Then comes the 4th plague. Swarms of flies descend on Egypt, but notably, carefully they avoid Goshen, where the Hebrews live. This precision makes Pharaoh's advisors nervous. The Hebrew god can control exactly where his plagues strike, they tell him. This is not natural magic. In Egyptian lands, the flies are relentless. They swarm in clouds so thick they block out the sun in some districts. They seek out eyes, mouths, ears, noses, any opening in the body. People cannot eat without swallowing flies, cannot breathe without inhaling them, cannot sleep without them crawling across their faces. Kenti records the suicide of 3 palace servants in a single night. They all leave similar notes. "I cannot endure the buzzing another moment. It's inside my head now. Even when I'm in a sealed room, I hear it. I will never know silence again." The 7 robed men stand in the middle of the worst swarms, completely untouched. Flies land on their robes but don't bite. They crawl across their hoods but don't enter, as if recognizing something kindred, something equally unnatural. An old priest of Osiris approaches one of the robed men. Kenti watches from a distance. The priest demands to know who they really serve. The robed man laughs. It's the first time Kenti has heard any of them make a sound beyond their chanting. The laugh is wrong. Too many tones at once, like multiple voices speaking in harmony. "We serve the morning star," the robed man says, "the first of the fallen, the adversary. And he is teaching your people a valuable lesson. When your God moves in judgment, we ensure you remember it forever." Moses warns of the 5th plague. Tomorrow, all Egyptian livestock will die. Only the animals in Goshen will be spared. Pharaoh sends Kenti to verify the extent of the plague. He wants documentation, evidence, something to explain to his advisors why he's refusing to relent. Kenti travels to the pastures outside Memphis at dawn. What he witnesses there breaks something inside him. At the exact moment Moses specified, the animals begin to die. But not peacefully. The cattle, horses, camels, sheep, they all start making sounds that animals shouldn't be able to make. Sounds like screaming, like human screaming. Their eyes roll back in their heads. Foam pours from their mouths. Some stagger in circles, crashing into fences, into each other, into the ground, as if something is attacking them from within their own bodies. A donkey near Kenti collapses. Its legs kick wildly. Its braying turns into something that sounds almost like words, like it's trying to speak. Then it goes still. In a field of dead animals, Kenti sees one of the 7 robed men. The figure moves between the corpses, holding a clay vessel. He places the jar over each animal's mouth, tilting it as if pouring out water. But he's not pouring, he's collecting. Something flows from each animal's mouth into the jar, something that glows faintly, like moonlight on water. The robed man notices Kenti watching. He turns fully toward him. For the first time, Kenti sees inside the hood. I saw his teeth, Kenti writes later, his hand shaking so badly the script is barely legible. They were filed to points like a crocodile's, and his eyes, they were completely black, no whites, no iris, just endless black like staring into a well at midnight. He smiled at me, and I heard his voice in my mind, though his lips never moved. We see you, Scribe. We have always seen you. Kenti flees back to Memphis. That night he cannot sleep. Every shadow in his room seems to move independently. Every creak in the palace sounds like footsteps approaching his door. The 6th plague comes without warning. Moses and Aaron appear before Pharaoh. In silence, they take handfuls of furnace soot and scatter it toward heaven. Within the hour, boils break out across Egypt. The biblical account says they afflicted Egyptians and their animals, that even the magicians couldn't stand before Moses because of the boils. Kenti's description reveals why. The boils begin as small red marks, painful but endurable. Then they swell. Within hours, they're the size of dates. Within a day, some are as large as pomegranates. The pain is unlike anything Egyptian physicians have encountered. Victims cannot walk because boils cover their feet, cannot sit because they cover their legs and buttocks, cannot lie down because they cover their backs. There is no position that brings relief. But the pain is only the beginning. Some boils, when they burst, don't release pus. They release shadow. Actual darkness pours from the wounds like liquid, but moves like smoke. It defies lamplight, defies sunlight. It simply exists, wrong and impossible. Those affected by these particular boils hear things. Whispers coming from their own wounds, voices speaking their names, recounting their sins, their secret shames, things they've never told another living soul. A nobleman named Jehuti comes to Kenti in desperation. His arms are covered in boils, 3 of which have burst to release shadow. The voices, he whispers, terrified. They know about the servant girl I killed, the one I buried in the desert 5 years ago. They know about the taxes I stole. They know everything, and they won't stop talking. The next morning, Jehuti is found dead. He cut his own throat. The 7 robed men visit homes of the afflicted, but they don't offer medicine, don't bring relief. They simply stand and watch. Kenti follows one of them to a house in the lower city. Through a window, he observes the robed figure standing over a dying woman. The woman's body is almost entirely covered in boils. Some have burst into shadow. She's weeping, begging for death. The robed man stands with his hands outstretched, palms open, those scarred palms with the inverted star. Something invisible flows from the woman's body into those palms. Kenti can't see it directly, but he sees its effect. The woman's suffering intensifies. Her weeping becomes screaming. And the robed man, he seems to grow more solid, more present, as if her agony is making him stronger. He was feeding, Kenti writes, feeding on her suffering as a man feeds on bread, and she was not dying fast enough for his hunger. Moses warns Pharaoh of the 7th plague. By now, Pharaoh's own advisors are begging him to relent. Egypt is destroyed, they tell him. Let the people go. But Pharaoh's heart is hardened. The biblical account attributes this to God. Kenti's account suggests something more complex. Pharaoh's eyes have changed, he writes. They look glazed, distant, as if he is not fully present in his own body. I wonder if the Dark Ones have done something to him, if his refusal is truly his own anymore. Moses stretches his staff toward heaven. The storm that follows is unprecedented. Thunder shakes the palace foundations. Hail falls in chunks the size of a man's fist. Fire runs along the ground, consuming everything it touches. The combination of ice and fire is impossible, unnatural. But what terrifies Kenti most is the precision. The storm doesn't move randomly. Lightning strikes in perfect patterns, geometric formations that hurt the mind to perceive. The hail falls in waves, each time to catch people as they flee for shelter. Between thunderclaps, he hears something that makes his blood run cold. Laughter. Not human laughter. Something ancient and cruel, like the sound of rock grinding against rock. Like wind howling through tombs, like the death rattle of 1,000 dying men all at once. The 7 robed men stand in the palace courtyard, arms raised to the sky. Hail passes through their bodies as if they're made of smoke. Fire strikes the ground around them but never touches them. Kenti observes Moses during the plague. The Hebrew prophet's face shows not righteousness but genuine concern. He's praying urgently, his lips moving rapidly, his expression troubled, as if something has gone terribly wrong, as if this exceeds what God intended. When the storm finally ceases at Moses' prayer, Kenti goes outside to assess the damage. The destruction is total, every plant shattered, every tree broken. But it's the scorch marks that make his hands shake. They form symbols on the ground. The inverted star repeated across the landscape in massive scale, and around each star, script in a language he doesn't recognize. Pharaoh's chief astronomer, Imhotep the Younger, studies the patterns for 3 days. His conclusion delivered in a shaking voice: these marks form a binding circle. All of Egypt is now contained within it. We are trapped inside something larger than we understand, and I do not think we can break free. Still, impossibly, Pharaoh refuses. Moses and Aaron return with another warning. Even Pharaoh's servants confront him now. How long will this man be a snare to us? Let the people go. Do you not yet realize that Egypt is ruined? Pharaoh offers a compromise. The men can go, but not the women and children. Moses refuses. Either all Israel goes or none go. Pharaoh's answer is final. Get away from me. Take care never to see my face again, for on the day you see my face, you shall die. Moses replies, as you say, I will never see your face again. He stretches his staff over the land. An east wind begins to blow. It blows all that day, all that night. By the next morning, locusts cover Egypt. The biblical account says they covered the face of the whole land, so that the land was darkened, that they ate every plant and all the fruit of the trees the hail had left, that nothing green remained. All of this is true, but it's not complete. The locusts don't just eat plants, they devour wood, fabric, papyrus, anything organic. In the palace archives, Khenti watches in horror as centuries of records are consumed in hours. Treaties with other nations, tax records, historical chronicles, the written memory of Egypt disappearing into insect mouths. A librarian named Bakankonsu tries to save what he can. He grabs armfuls of scrolls, running toward a sealed room. The locusts swarm him. They're in his hair, in his clothes, in his mouth. He stumbles, falls. The scrolls scatter. By the time other archivists reach him, both Bakankonsu and the scrolls are gone. Nothing left but scraps. But Kenti notices something strange, something that makes his skin crawl. Certain houses are completely untouched. Locusts swarm everywhere else, blotting out the sun. But these specific homes have not a single insect. He investigates 3 such houses. On each doorpost he finds marks. Not the blood that will later mark Hebrew homes. Something else. Ash mixed with something dark and oily that smells of copper and rot. At the 3rd house, Kenti interviews the occupants. Henu, a merchant, and his wife Merit. They're terrified but alive, unharmed, while their neighbours suffer. A man came to us 6 weeks ago, Henu admits quietly. He keeps glancing at the corners of the room as he speaks. He wore black robes. We couldn't see his face, but his voice. It echoed like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. He said he could protect us from what was coming. All we had to do was denounce the Hebrew God and pledge allegiance to the true Lord of this world. Merit speaks up, her voice barely a whisper. We were afraid. We have children. We said yes. Henu shows Kenti his palm. The inverted star is burned into his flesh, the same symbol the robed men bear. It hurt at first, Henu says, hurt like holding fire. But then it stopped, and things changed. We can see differently now, see what's really there. What do you mean? Kenti asks. Merritt points to the corner of the room. You can't see it, but there's something standing right there. It's been there since we took the mark. Always watching, never moving, always so very hungry. Kenti looks at the corner. He sees nothing, but as he's leaving, he glances back. Just for a moment, in his peripheral vision, he thinks he sees something. A shape that shouldn't exist. Something tall and wrong. He blinks. It's gone. That night, Khenti cannot stop shaking. He writes in his journal, I'm beginning to understand. These dark ones, they are not merely making the plagues worse, they are building something. Each plague feeds them, makes them stronger. And some Egyptians are choosing to join them rather than endure more suffering. We are being harvested, sorted, and I fear the worst is yet to come. Back in the present, Nathaniel stops reading. He looks exhausted, haunted. I need you to understand something, he says to the camera. I'm a biblical archaeologist. I've spent my career studying ancient texts. I approach these things academically, rationally. But after reading Khenti's account, after researching the connections across history, I had to accept something impossible. He pulls out more documents, medieval manuscripts, rabbinical commentaries, esoteric Jewish mysticism texts. I interviewed Rabbi Samuel Fisher. He's an expert in Kabbalah, in the hidden traditions of Jewish mysticism. He told me something I'd never heard in any seminary, any academic setting. The footage shows an elderly rabbi with kind eyes but a deeply troubled expression. There's a tradition, Rabbi Fisher explains, not widely taught, about the Exodus. Most people know the surface story. God sent plagues. Pharaoh's heart was hardened. Moses led the people out. But there's a deeper tradition, passed down quietly, about what else happened during those plagues. The rabbi pauses, choosing his words carefully. The tradition says that when God moved against Egypt, the adversary saw opportunity. Satan cannot match God's power. He cannot create what God creates, cannot perform the miracles God performs. But he can corrupt God's purposes. He can take divine judgment and twist it, turn justice into cruelty, turn punishment into torture, turn discipline into genocide. The goal, the rabbi continues, to make people fear God's wrath so much that they turn away from him entirely, or worse, to make people believe that God himself is the monster, that the Almighty is not righteous but sadistic, that his judgments are not just but excessive. This is Satan's greatest victory, you see, not to make people disbelieve in God, but to make them hate him. Nathaniel returns to Khenti's account. The 9th plague. Moses stretches his hand toward heaven. Darkness covers Egypt. The biblical account is deceptively simple. Thick darkness covered all the land for 3 days. Darkness that could be felt. But the Israelites had light in their dwellings. Khenti's account reveals why this plague broke so many minds. When the darkness falls, it's not gradual. One moment, full daylight. The next, absolute black. But it's not the darkness of night. Stars don't shine. The moon doesn't rise. Fire cannot illuminate it. Men held torches, Kenti writes, and the torches burnt. We could feel the heat, see the flames. But the flames revealed nothing. The light existed, but it could not penetrate the dark. This was not absence of light. This was presence of something else, something that devoured light. Kenti is trapped in the palace archives when the darkness falls. He has a lamp. It burns uselessly. His account from the next 3 days becomes increasingly fragmented, increasingly incoherent. The writing of a man descending into madness. First day, I'm not alone in this darkness. There are things moving around me. I hear them. Footsteps that are not human. Too many legs. They scrape against the floor. Breathing that is not my own. Cold breath on the back of my neck. When I turn around, there is nothing. But I know it is there. Second day, hands touch my face in the dark. Cold hands with too many fingers. They trace my features like a blind man learning a face. I screamed. I swung my fists at nothing. The hands withdrew, but I can still feel where they touched me. My skin burns cold. The voices started today. They whisper my name. They know things about me, my childhood, the time I stole from my father, the woman I wanted but never pursued, because she was married, the child I saw drown in the Nile, and did nothing to save because I was afraid. They know everything, and they whisper it back to me in my own voice. Third day. I see them now. Eyes in the darkness. Red eyes like hot coals. Dozens of them, watching me, never blinking, never closing. Shapes pass before me. Tall figures with limbs that bend wrong, that bend too many times. I close my eyes, but I still see them. The darkness is inside me now, inside my mind. I understand now. This plague is not about preventing Egyptians from seeing. It is about forcing us to see what is really there, what has always been there, hidden by the mercy of light. We are not alone in this world. We have never been alone. And that is the most terrible truth of all. On the third day, the darkness lifts as suddenly as it fell. Kenti emerges from the archives. His hair is gone completely white. He's lost weight. His hands shake uncontrollably. He's one of the fortunate ones. 17 people in the palace are found dead. They died of no apparent cause except pure terror. Their faces are frozen in expressions of absolute horror. Dozens more went mad. They rocked back and forth, muttering about things they saw. Things with too many limbs. Things that whispered their sins. Things that promised them power if they would only surrender. Several take their own lives in the weeks that follow. One priest carves out his own eyes, with a ceremonial knife, screaming, "I can still see them. Even with my eyes gone, I can still see them." The 7 robed men emerge from the darkness completely unaffected. In fact, they seem stronger, more solid, as if the darkness fed them, made them more real. Kenti observes them in the palace courtyard. They move differently now, he writes. Before they seemed to glide, to drift. Now they walk with weight, with presence, as if they are more here than they were. The darkness gave them substance. Still, impossibly, Pharaoh refuses to let the Hebrews go. Moses delivers the final warning. "Thus says the Lord, about midnight I will go out in the midst of Egypt, and every firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sits on his throne, to the firstborn of the slave girl behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of the cattle. There shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there has never been, nor ever will be again." He instructs the Hebrews to mark their doorposts with the blood of a lamb. The destroyer will pass over these marked houses. Kenti is a firstborn son. He knows he will die unless he acts. But what can he do? He's not Hebrew. He cannot claim their protection. He decides to hide in the palace library and document everything. If he must die, at least he will die doing what he was trained to do. Recording, preserving, bearing witness. As midnight approaches, the temperature drops dramatically. "I could see my breath," Kenti writes, though it was still the height of summer. The air became heavy, oppressive, as if something massive was descending upon Egypt. Then he feels it. A presence moving through the land, holy and terrible, righteous and merciless. The angel of death, the destroyer. I felt it pass near me, and every part of me wanted to run, to hide, to cease existing, rather than be in the presence of something so vast and awful. Throughout Egypt, firstborn sons die, but they die peacefully, in their sleep, swift, merciful. A Divine judgment, yes, but not cruel. Kenti, hidden in the library, survives. He's not in his home, not where the destroyer expected him to be. Or perhaps God had other plans for him. A witness to be preserved, but his survival allows him to see what happens next. Behind the angel of death comes something else. Kenti hears them before he sees them, chanting in that wrong backwards-forwards language. He creeps to a window and looks out onto the streets of Memphis. The 7 robed men are moving through the city, but they are not alone now. They are accompanied by dozens more. Where did they all come from? Have they been here all along, hiding? They move in a procession carrying their clay vessels. They enter homes where the destroyer has already passed. Kenti follows at a distance, terrified but compelled. He must know. He must document. He peers through a window of one house. Inside, a family mourns their firstborn son. The boy lies on his bed, peaceful in death. The mother weeps. The father holds her. Then one of the robed men enters. He stands over the dead boy, raises his hands. The boy's eyes snap open. He's not alive, not truly, but he's stirring, moving. His mouth opens. A sound emerges, not a word, a moan of pain and fear. The parents stare in horror. The boy sits up, his dead eyes look at his mother. "Mama," he whispers. "Mama, it hurts. Why does it hurt?" The mother screams. The robed man holds his clay vessel over the boy's mouth. Something flows from the boy into the jar. Not his soul, that's already gone. Something else, the fear, the confusion, the pain of a child who doesn't understand why he's dying. And from the mother, the robed man collects her anguish, her grief multiplied by watching her dead child suffer. This happens throughout Egypt, in every home where a firstborn died. What should have been swift divine judgment becomes prolonged torture. What should have been mercy becomes cruelty. All of it collected, gathered, concentrated into clay vessels. Kenti watches multiple homes. The pattern is always the same. The dead briefly wake. They suffer. Their families suffer watching them. The robed men harvest it all. He writes, "They are feeding. This is what it has all been for. Every plague amplified, every judgment twisted into something worse. They have been building to this moment, harvesting us like grain, and we are powerless to stop them." As dawn breaks, the robed men gather. Kenti follows them outside the city, to an abandoned temple of Set in the desert. He hides among the ruins, watching. There are 33 of them now, all wearing black robes, all bearing the inverted star. They form a circle in the temple courtyard. One by one, they pour the contents of their vessels into a central basin. The combined energy glows with sickly light, yellow-green like infected flesh. It pulses like a living heart. They begin to chant in unison. Kenti records the words phonetically, not understanding them. Modern linguistic analysis, Nathaniel explains, identifies the language as Proto-Canaanite, mixed with Akkadian. The translation, Lord of Flies, Prince of Darkness, Light-Bearer, Morning Star, Adversary of the Most High. We offer you the harvest of Egypt's sorrow. We offer you the tears of mothers and the blood of children. We offer you the corruption of judgment and the perversion of justice. Accept this offering and grant us power. The light in the basin rises. It coalesces. Kenti's description breaks down completely here. The script becomes erratic, words scratched out. Started over. I cannot describe what I saw. My mind refuses. To give it form in words is to give it power. To make it more real, I will say only this. It had wings of shadow and eyes of fire. Its presence was malice given form. And when it spoke not with sound, but directly into the mind. The voice reaches even Kenti in his hiding place. This is but the beginning. You have learned well, my servants. Wherever the Almighty moves in judgment, you will follow. His justice will become your feast. His righteousness will breed despair. Humanity will learn to fear the God who claims to love them. They will learn to hate the God who claims to be good. And in their hatred and their fear, they will turn to me. For I offer them what their God does not, the promise of power without judgment, freedom without consequence, pleasure without price. I am the adversary of all that is righteous, and I will corrupt every good thing. Starting here, starting now. This is my Egypt now as much as it is his. The robed figures bow in worship. As they rise, one turns directly toward Kenti's hiding place. Though he cannot see a face beneath the hood, he knows he's been seen. We see you, Scribe of Egypt. Kenti runs. He runs faster than he's ever run in his life. His heart pounds. His breath rips at his lungs. He makes it back to the palace. Inside there is chaos. Pharaoh's firstborn son is dead. The prince has finally relented. The Hebrews will leave at dawn. Kenti goes to the archives. His hands shake so badly he can barely hold his stylus. He writes his final entry. I am writing this testament and will hide it in the sealed chamber beneath the archive. Let whoever finds this know the truth. The plagues were God's judgment. Yes. The Bible will record them as such, and it will not be wrong. But something else corrupted them. The adversary, Satan himself, sent his servants to turn judgment into torment, to harvest human suffering for his own power, to make people fear the Almighty rather than trust him. They told me I was seen. They know I know. I do not think I have much time. If you read this, understand. They are eternal. They do not die as we die. They wait. Wherever disaster strikes, wherever God's hand moves in judgment, they will come. To amplify, to corrupt, to feed. They are watching me even now as I write this. The shadows in my room move wrong, independently, against the light. When the next judgment comes, they will be there. They are patient, they are hungry, and they are never truly gone. I hear footsteps outside my door, multiple sets, moving in unison. The final line, written in a frantic scrawl, they are at my door. The text ends. Kenti is never heard from again. His name disappears from all subsequent palace records, as if he never existed. Back in the present day, Nathaniel sits in silence for a long moment. The camera captures his exhaustion, his fear. After I translated Kenti's account, I started seeing connections. Throughout all of human history, wherever major disasters strike, there are reports, always suppressed, always dismissed as superstition or hysteria, but they're there if you know where to look. He shows documents, medieval plague journals that mention men in dark robes visiting the dying, not to bring comfort, but to watch. World War I letters that describe hooded figures walking through no man's land between the trenches. Soldiers from both sides reported seeing them. The figures were never hit by bullets, never affected by gas. They simply walked among the dead and dying, observing. Spanish flu records from 1918 contain multiple accounts, officially suppressed, of mysterious visitors to hospitals. Nurses reported seeing men in dark clothing standing at the bedsides of the worst cases. Not doctors, not family, just standing there, watching. And during the recent pandemic, Nathaniel says quietly, there were social media posts. Dozens of them, from different countries. People reporting dark-clothed figures outside hospitals. Always alone, always standing perfectly still. Always watching. Most of those posts were deleted within days. The accounts that posted them either went silent or disappeared entirely. He looks directly at the camera. His next words are measured, deliberate. 2 months ago, my office was broken into. Nothing was stolen, but my files on the black-robed men, all my research on Kenti's scrolls, everything was scattered across the floor. And carved into my desk, deep grooves cut into the wood, was a symbol. The inverted star. He shows the camera a photograph of his desk. The symbol is there, precise and deliberate. Dr. Rachel Abrams, who helped me translate the scrolls, who was with me when we found them, she's been missing for 2 months. The last email I got from her, she said she'd been seeing someone outside her apartment. Same person every night. Just standing on the sidewalk across the street, looking up at her window. She took pictures. I have them here. He shows dark, grainy photographs. A figure in dark clothing. The images are blurry, as if the camera couldn't quite focus on the person. But in one shot, taken with flash, there's a reflection in a window. 2 points of red light where eyes should be. Rachel's last email to me said, and I quote, "Nathaniel, I don't think he's human. I've been watching him for 3 nights now. He never moves, never shifts his weight, never looks at his phone or checks his watch. He just stands there for hours. And last night, I swear, he was there when I went to bed at midnight. I woke up at 3 a.m. and looked out. He was in the exact same position, exact same posture, like he hadn't moved a millimeter in 3 hours. I'm leaving my apartment tomorrow. I'll contact you when I'm somewhere safe." That was 63 days ago. She never contacted me. Nathaniel reaches beneath his desk and pulls out a clay vessel. It's ancient, cracked but intact. This was recovered with Khenti scrolls. Carbon dating confirms it's from 1446 BCE. But look at this. He rotates it slowly for the camera. The surface is covered in etchings. Multiple scripts, multiple languages, clearly added over vast spans of time. Ancient Egyptian hieratic, Akkadian cuneiform, classical Greek, Latin, medieval Arabic, and here, at the bottom, English. He reads them slowly, his voice hollow. 2004 BCE. Babylon 539 BCE. Rome 165 CE during the Antonine Plague. Constantinople 541 CE during the Plague of Justinian. London 1665 CE, the Great Plague. And then this one. He pauses, his finger on the most recent inscription. Wuhan 2019 CE. He sets down the vessel carefully, as if it might shatter. But that's not what terrifies me most. Look at the very bottom. These marks are fresh, carved within the last few months, based on the oxidation. He shows the camera. 3 sets of coordinates are etched into the clay. I had these coordinates analysed. They point to 3 locations on 3 different continents. I won't say where. I won't give them any more attention than necessary. But I will say this. All 3 locations are major metropolitan areas. Millions of people. He looks exhausted, haunted. I don't know what's coming, but if the pattern holds, if Kenti was right, then something is. Some disaster, some judgment. Natural or divine or both. And when it comes, they'll be there. The servants of the adversary. Waiting to turn whatever happens into something worse, waiting to harvest human suffering, waiting to make us fear the very concept of divine justice. Nathaniel leans toward the camera. Moses freed the Israelites from slavery. That's true. The Bible records it accurately. God delivered his people with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. That's all true. But something else happened in Egypt that night, something the Bible doesn't record. Maybe couldn't record. Maybe shouldn't record. Satan learned something. He learned that he couldn't match God's power directly. But he didn't need to. He just needed to corrupt it. To take divine judgment and twist it into something that makes people hate God instead of fear him. That makes them despair instead of repent. The plagues of Egypt weren't just about Pharaoh's hardened heart. They were about the adversary learning to weaponize divine judgment itself. And he's been perfecting that technique for 3,000 years. He reaches forward. The camera shakes. I don't know if sharing this will help or make things worse, but people need to know. When disasters strike, we're not alone in them. There are forces that wait for our darkest moments, not to cause them, but to make them worse, to twist them, to harvest our suffering like crops. Kenti died trying to warn us. His warning is 3,400 years old, but it's more relevant now than ever. Because whatever is coming, they'll be ready. They're always ready. They're always watching. They're always hungry. The screen goes black. For several seconds, there's only silence, then text appears. Dr. Nathaniel Graves has not responded to requests for follow-up interviews. His university office has been vacant for 6 weeks. His apartment was found empty, with no signs of struggle or forced entry. A clay vessel matching the one described in this documentary was found on his desk. The fresh coordinates had been scratched out, as if by fingernails. Security cameras in his building's lobby show Dr. Graves leaving at 2:47 a.m. on October 3rd, 2024. He was alone. The cameras show him walking out the front door. They do not show him walking down the street in either direction. He simply exits the building and is never seen on any camera again. His whereabouts remain unknown. The text fades. In the darkness, there's a sound. Distant. Barely audible. Multiple voices chanting in unison. Words that sound backwards and forwards simultaneously. Words in a language that shouldn't exist. The chanting grows slowly louder. Then, abruptly, it stops. In the silence that follows, a single voice whispers, "We see you." The recording ends.